Sometimes nothing can soothe a parched Texan's throat like an icy cold beer. The Texas Brewing Company in the West End district of downtown Dallas is one of the very few local places you can go to watch the brew being made and taste the fresh product. In fact, Texas Brewing is the only true microbrewery in Texas.
I have the only microbrewery to my knowledge, because I'm almost sure that Celis down in Austin is over 15,000 barrels. So as a microbrewery, I'm probably the only one in Texas.
So what is the difference between a brew pub and a microbrewery?
The concept of a brew pub is about 70 or 80% restaurant food, and they brew their own beer on location. Before Prohibition, there was literally several thousand small breweries in the United States. After Prohibition, we just had less than 50. Today, we have less than 40, I mean, not 40, but 400.
What beverages are manufactured here?
Right now, we have 4 beers that we handle commercially. Our top seller, for some reason or other, is our darkest beer. It's called Texas Cowboy. Short version of that. We have the lightest beer that we have, and that's light in calories as well as color, is called Bluebonnet. These are names indigenous to Texas. We have a new beer that we're just coming out with, or the box is right here, is called Texas Gold. The last beer that I have is called Outback Lager. It's a good-selling beer, and it's styled, it's more bitter, it's styled after the Australian-type beers.
The small company currently sells its products only in Texas, brews small batches at a time, and keeps the beer constantly refrigerated to preserve the freshness. Ron McKechnie and Jose Olivares run the brewing equipment. How many pounds of grain and hops do you use in a batch of beer?
Okay, as far as the grain, we'll use, for this batch of Texas Gold we're making right now, 1,100 pounds of pale two-row malt. As far as water, this is a 22-barrel process. A barrel is 31 gallons, or as you know, a half barrel keg, that's 15 and a half gallons. So in one batch we'll make 44 kegs of beer.
Because they're a small group, efficiency is the key to keeping product costs down, and Jose and Ron run a tight ship.
When we're brewing, it usually takes 8 hours to get a brew done, and it takes 6 days to ferment and 21 days for aging.
So just how does Texas Brewing produce beer? The process begins by adding special grains to highly purified water.
We put the grain in the top of this thing. It looks kind of silly because it's sitting up on a tripod here, but believe me, this is the jewel of our whole business. We can tip this thing and get the grain out of it, and most people have to pull the grain out of their mash tuns. The hot water takes the sugar out of the grain and puts it in the false bottom here, and we take that off and leave the grain behind. This kettle, depending on the recipe, we boil everything here, and from that point on is where we start calling it beer. In here, when you boil, you kill everything. You kill every kind of bacteria or contamination that might be in the air or in the water. And then past this point, we keep it cut off from the regular air in the room.
Then come the hops.
And the hops are to beer like chilies are to chili. Hops are the seasoning for the beer. So we put them in at different times during what we call the boil. The boil generally lasts about an hour, and then we run it through the heat exchanger and into one of these fermenters. We have a number of fermenters here, and it's here where we pitch the yeast. Now remember, in making our beer, we only use 4 ingredients. We use water, obviously. We use hops for seasoning. We use 100% barley malt. Then we use a German strain of brewing yeast, which all together, that gives you the flavor in the beer. So we add the yeast after we have dropped the temperature from boiling at about 212 degrees. It drops into one of our fermenters at somewhere around 65 degrees, and then we cool it down to close to 50 degrees, and we add the yeast to that cold, sweet wort. We pitch the yeast in it, and 6 or 7 days yet later, we have brewed all the alcohol virtually that we're going to brew in that particular fermenter. That's called the primary stage of fermentation.
The beer is allowed to age several weeks, is filtered twice, and sent into the dispensing tanks. After that, it's on its way to the bottling process where the sterile bottles are filled, labeled, crowned, and packed, soon to end up in a package store near you. If you'd like to see this process firsthand, Texas Brewing Company does offer tours. Call 214-871-7990 for information. For About Town, I'm Catherine Wallstrom.